Hello, I'm Louise Pennington, Professional Development Lead for Numicon here at Oxford University Press, and I'm here this evening with my lovely colleague Lisa, who's an independent maths consultant. So welcome to our unboxing of ideas of how you can use manipulatives in a meaningful way to develop children's mathematical understanding.
We've got lots of ideas to share with you today that you can also share with parents to encourage a rich mathematical learning environment both in the classroom and at home. For the purpose of this short session, we're going to be using the term manipulatives to mean any physical object that can be held and moved to expose mathematical ideas.
So let's get started.
Fabulous.
Should we put this down here?
Let's put this down here and we'll go for our lucky dip.
So we're having a lucky dip today, so this one's sticking out here I think. There's a little bit of... Right, looks like we've got an egg box, Lisa.
Egg box, and we've got some pegs. Fabulous.
So, my initial thoughts with an egg box would be thinking about children who are learning initially to count with one-to-one correspondence, or older children who have perhaps a little bit of enumeration difficulty, and by that we're talking about synchronising the oral sequence of words, counting words, with placing objects or touching objects. So quite often children who struggle with that, they run away with themselves, so the count ends up being more or less than the actual items that they have. So to slow them down a little bit, it's quite useful to think about placing items in something like an egg box, then you can slow down. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's a 12 egg box, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, which enables us to get an accurate count of the set that we've got.
Fabulous. And as children move on to learning about multiplication as repeated addition, this is a really nice idea to think about children counting in steps. So at the beginning, children need to be able to count in steps of 2, 5 and 10. So you could talk to children about maybe if I put 2 items in each section, then we can encourage children to begin counting in steps of 2 to find the total amount that is in the egg box now. So instead of just counting in the ones, we could talk to the children about counting 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. to count in those steps for multiplication.
And almost a Blue Peter moment there.
Dun, dun, dun.
I think what's nice about an egg box is that it's something we all have readily available, and for me, Lisa, I know how much you like a tens frame.
I do love a tens frame.
So if I just carefully cut off 2 at the top, then you would have a makeshift tens frame, which means that you would have something that you could probably work with.
Fabulous. 10 is just such an important number within our number system because we have a base 10 number system. So working with egg boxes with a total of 10 provides children with lots and lots of opportunities to see numbers in different representations. So if we took the egg box, if I actually held the egg box vertically like this, we could talk to children about representing numbers in the pairs-wise pattern, which is like our Numicon shapes, and the children can begin to put objects in one at a time in pairs. This way we can pull out the properties of odd and even numbers. When the numbers are here and we've got pairs like this and a partner, we talk about those numbers being even. We can see if we add another one here, we've got 3 objects in total. This pairs-wise pattern shows the fact that the number 3 is an odd number. The egg box can also be used horizontally. And in this way, we can start showing children a different representation of number using 5 as a base and some more. So they'll start beginning to see 6 as 5 and 1 more, 7 as 5 and 2 more, eventually till they get to seeing 10 as 1 whole. They might begin to start seeing 9 as 10 with 1 missing, which is fabulous because it starts bringing them into their subtraction knowledge. So tens frames, egg boxes, lots and lots of things that you can do with these.
Brilliant.
Fabulous.
Calm down.
Excellent. Right, let's have a little delve and see what we can find here. Oh, I think we've got some coins and some Numicon shapes in here.
Right, so initially I think it's quite useful for children to explore things like this, and it's quite useful to have them in the boxes because they're having to guess. So what do we think's in there? It sounds like a few coins.
It sounds like a few coins in there. It sounds like slightly heavier ones in there. We could also talk about the weight of them and think about which one might have more.
Yeah, so that's lighter but sounds like more, and that's a little bit heavier. So we can kind of start to guess what coins are in here. We've also got a 50p piece, which I think might be quite useful. So if we have a peep inside, this one sounds like it's got 5p's in actually. let's see. Oh, I was right.
Fabulous.
So we've got some five pences, and that's quite important. We've got some money in here, so we could have, you know, looked at explored which coins are in which one. But the 5 is useful because obviously we can work quite nicely with the Numicon shapes there.
Fabulous.
So I'm going to put that with there. Do you want to have a look what's in that one, Lisa? 2 pences in here.
Got 10 pences in here.
So usefully, we've got some representations that would help us, wouldn't we?
Children sometimes find it quite difficult to understand the value of coins due to the fact that the size does not really tell you about the value of the coins. So we usually find it quite helpful to put the Numicon shape next to on top of the coin so children can actually see the values of these shapes, values of the coins, so that we know that the 10p is actually worth 10 compared to my 1p, which is only worth 1.
There's the 2. And that's quite useful, isn't it? And also I think we've got an opportunity here to look at equivalence, because I know from being a parent that equivalence with coins is quite difficult for children to get to grips with. So my children would often go for the handful of copper coins rather than be wanting to take the 50p piece. So that equivalence in coin is quite important, isn't it? So we could look and see if we could match the 50p piece with the coins here. So, oh, I've got 10p in 2p's.
And I think I've got 5 10p coins here, which would also be equivalent to my 50p.
So we could actually work out here that the smaller value of coins, yeah, we do. We have 50p worth in 2s, 5s and 1s. So that's quite useful that to have that as equivalence is quite important.
Yeah, it's a very nice way for children to think about making different amounts using different coins and talk about all the different ways that they could do that. Be a fabulous opportunity for them.
Brilliant. The coins. Matchboxes would work equally well with these, wouldn't it? Thinking about, you know, might not have these little favour boxes available.
Fabulous.
Let's see.
Oh, a piece of wrapping paper.
And I think sometimes we underestimate the opportunities that we've got with images such as this. This one's particularly nice because it hasn't got a pattern background, it's just got items on it. And it's nice that, you know, this is a boy-friendly piece of wrapping paper, or children who like transport. And I think for me what jumps out initially is pattern. So we've got an A-B pattern, so that's 2 items repeating one after the other. So we've got a scooter and a camper van repeating, and the same A-B pattern but a different colour here. So that's quite nice to explore the A-B patterns. And then if we look down the columns, we can see it's an A, B, C, D pattern. So we've got 4 items then repeating again. So the pattern is quite important. You could explore that quite nicely on here. And then perhaps something to do with estimation and counting.
Definitely, we could talk about maybe estimate the number of red buses there are and then maybe count to check how many there are. A nice idea is to put an object or an item on each of the bits that you're counting, and then children can then take those counters off and arrange them perhaps in the Numicon pattern or another familiar pattern to be able to count exactly how many there are.
Yeah, so working out without counting,
exactly.
Which we're leading them into that early calculation. So you're probably thinking around, you know, age 5 or 6, depending on how many items are on your piece of wrapping paper. But you can get quite complicated, you know, amounts, can't you?
Definitely.
Be able to work with.
And just finding totals, maybe the total number of scooters and mopeds there are. Then talking about comparison questions and thinking about, are there more scooters than buses? And then maybe thinking about moving into calculation and thinking about how many more red buses are there than scooters. That's a question that some children quite find difficult to answer. So we can do something very practically with using this.
So again, and I think that, you know, to get children to generate their own questions is also important, isn't it? To ask them to think about what question could you ask somebody else about the items that are on the wrapping paper.
Yeah, and then don't forget about 2D shapes. Children can identify 2D shapes from these pictures as well, thinking about why we've used different shapes to make different parts of the bus, things like that.
A lot of circles on there.
Quite a lot of circles, definitely.
So welcome to anyone who's just joined us. We've been talking about how you can use a variety of readily available manipulatives to deepen children's mathematical understanding, be it Numicon or ordinary household items, which, you know, we've kind of done a mixture of both so far.
We have. Right, let's see what else we can find. Oh, Lollipop Sticks. Fabulous.
And this is quite nice because, I mean, you could start with something like, and I'm guessing these are in tens, but I don't know. But we could start with a mixture. So we can separate them out into single ones, and we could ask children to estimate. So can you pick up what you think, Lisa, would be about 10? Let's have a go and see who's closest.
Fabulous. Estimation is a very important skill for children to be practicing. So at early stages, it's fabulous. So let's see. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 lollipop sticks.
I've got 11.
You've got 11. So I think you're a little bit closer than me because you are only 1 away from your 10.
I am 1 away, and actually I'm over 10 and you were under 10, so that's quite important as well.
Lots of discussion about that would be fabulous.
And that could obviously develop for slightly older children too. Could you pick up 27? So we're getting an estimation around what that feels like in the hand.
Fabulous. Also, when we're thinking about counting larger amounts of objects, sometimes if there are too many objects, children might begin counting in ones. They may get distracted and all of a sudden they've forgotten how many they've counted. A really important skill is to be able to start grouping. And again, because we have a base 10 number system, grouping in groups of 10 is actually fabulous for children. So if they were counting these sticks, I might just ask them to think about putting them into groups of 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'll ask the children, I'm just using Loom Bands at the moment. I know the children really loved Loom Bands quite a while ago, but at the moment they're not so popular, so they're quite cheap in stores, so I've bought quite a few Loom Bands. I've made a group of 10 here, so I've put now I can see that I've got my 3 groups of 10. So it moves children away from that counting in ones and start to begin to calculate and thinking, okay, if I've got 10, I can start begin counting in 10. So I've got 10, 20, 30, because I know 10, add another 10, add another 10 will be my 30.
And it's really important to bundle those up yourself. So you've made the 10 and then to separate them back out again. So you could have, 5 and some. And also I could have then from here, I could find 17 by taking 3 away from the 20. So that's quite important. And then obviously we've got some more. So, we could work with, working up into kind of age 7, 6, 7 and beyond, that we could start to bundle these up in 10s until we get 100.
Just like our place value system. So then once we've got 100, we'll just bundle all the lollipop sticks together and now say that we've got one group of 100, which will really help children with that understanding of place value.
And then we can take them apart and put them together again, which is really important.
Exactly. Fabulous.
Let's have a look what else we've got down here. Oh, just in time. So my initial thoughts here would be around, for younger children, it's a really motivational. These are chocolate eggs, which we might have to open in a second. They're really motivating for children in terms of an item they might want to count or might want to share fairly with somebody else. And also, they're quite nice, I'm sure, at least if we open them.
You can see I was getting very excited about opening them.
They probably will fit quite nicely inside inside the Numicon 10 shape. So again, we've got a reason to count a particular number out, and they're different colours as well.
Fabulous.
That blue one's looking like it.
Again, to our one-to-one correspondence. Fabulous, and we counted our 10.
So that'd be quite nice. And then for me, I would want to think about, particularly with shopping, this probably has been on offer now because Easter's finished, so it might be in a buy one get one free offer, or it might be somewhere else it might have an offer of 3 for 2. So it'd be quite nice with slightly older children to think about which offer is more value for money. And then also think about, is it cheaper here, is it cheaper in the shop down the road? So, thinking about, where would the best place to buy our mini eggs from. So.
And also thinking about measures. Fabulous. We've seen Louise has eaten one, so we've only got 9 left. Also thinking about measures. Measures are really important for children to be able to understand. And we really want to use real life objects where we're actually using measures. So we could think about here, reading about the mass of this packet, that it's 500 grams. We could talk about the units of measurement, the fact that we do measure it in grams when we're talking about mass. Also, when we think about the nutritional values here, we could talk to children about comparing and contrasting some of these values here. If you want to think about moving into decimal numbers, there's a real life example of using decimals here, where children can then start thinking about their nutritional value. links with PSHE, healthy eating, maybe not with the chocolate, but thinking about all of these things here, it really ties in nicely with their measure work. I might just have to have one. There we go.
Let's see if those there. That one was nice.
Fabulous. Let's see what else we've got.
That was a bad idea. That was a bad idea. So we've got a measuring jug here, and I think what springs to mind straight away is children having the opportunity to measure accurately. So pouring water, which obviously begins with young children exploring in early play, but also, you know, thinking about beginning to measure more accurately. So thinking about, could you measure 300 millilitres of water out in here? And then this one in particular has millilitres and ounces, so that comes in later, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. As children get older, they'll not only just need to work with metric units, they'll have to think about imperial units as well, and thinking about converting between metric and imperial units. So even just looking at the measuring scale here, you could talk to children about thinking about what roughly 400 millilitres looks like, and we could see that it's roughly about 3/4 of a cup, which is roughly about 14 ounces. So we can talk about those things already.
That's useful, I think.
Definitely. Measuring is so key important. So when you're doing baking or things like that, cooking with children, allowing them to actually measure out some of the ingredients or things like that will be really helpful for them to think about measuring accurately, but also reading the scales. Quite tricky thing to do sometimes. And
this one's quite nice because it's got the cup measurements, which is less familiar. So you know, to look at 1 cup and 2 cup, half a cup. So you've got fractions already in there as well.
Fabulous.
So yeah, so basically this would start from you know, young children exploring in water and sand, all the way through to children of about 10 or 11 years old in terms of their converting to imperial measures. So quite a useful bit of household equipment.
Fabulous. Oh, it's one of my favourites, I think.
Dangerous.
Dangerous. I'll try not to take Louise's eye out as we do this. But umbrellas. Fabulous. Oh, got a little tear in it. But thinking about this umbrella here, we could think about talking to the children about fractions. We could talk to them and think about what fraction of this umbrella is shaded red. We could talk to the children, they could see that 2 out of the 8 parts are red. So 2/8 of the umbrella is red. But we could then simplify that to say that 2/8 is actually equivalent to the quarter. Yeah? So thinking about real life opportunities like this to think about fractions.
And also, if you can see there, you've got 2 shades of blue. So actually how much of that umbrella is actually blue. So that's 4 out of the 8. So we could then simplify that to a half. So it's quite useful. Preferably one that's not got a hole in it.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I think that just happened quite recently. We didn't know like this before. But yeah, lots of things that you could do with that. Just thinking about patterns as well. Talk about the repeating patterns that we've got here. Lots of things that you can do with things like that.
So I think we're running a little bit short on time. So if we just quickly go through what's in the box, what we didn't get to, which is a lot. So we had a Russian doll here. So quite useful for positional language and ordering and size. It's quite useful to think about that.
We did have some Cuisinart rods, which we were going to talk to you about comparing lengths and things like that, and then also talking to you about a bit of fraction work to do with those.
Buttons. I think we can't underestimate how important it is to have more familiar objects for children, and buttons are nice because there are different sizes, but they still are all worth one, so that's quite nice.
Thinking about tape measures as well, thinking about, come back to our measure, children will use rulers and meter sticks a lot, but thinking about maybe body measures, they could be starting to use tape measures and think about when it would be appropriate to use a tape measure to think about measuring.
Small world people, so I think, you know, most children at home would have Lego people, etc. So thinking about counting in 2s or matching pairs, or thinking about how many fingers or toes they would have if they were more accurate representations.
Fabulous.
Have we got anything else? I think there's some cocktail sticks.
I think there were some
here.
cocktail sticks. Cocktail sticks, they're quite a small box of those, but those cocktail sticks, we were thinking that you could use those to model for 3D shapes. Children need to be are expected to be able to create their own 3D shapes. So cocktail sticks and maybe Play-Doh or blue tack works really nicely, and children could use cocktail sticks and things to think about making their own 3D shapes.
Yeah, and also I think there's something to be said there with cocktail sticks around non-standard measures. So how many cocktail sticks would it take to measure this thing? I think we also might have had some ribbons, which were quite nice to think about, longer and shorter. We could fold those into halves and fold again to make a quarter, so we can get some fraction work going in there as well.
Fabulous.
That was it. So that's gone really quickly. Thank you so much for watching. Do share your own ideas in the comment section and we'd love to hear them. You can find the best practice films, articles and a whole host of further support at www.oxfordprimary.co.uk/manipulatives. There will be another Facebook Live session in May, and this will be discussing early language language learning in the early years. So don't forget to follow us so that you can get notifications the next time we're live. We'll hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.